Good morning. It is 6:29 a.m. 6:30 now on Monday, April the 2nd, 2018. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. I dreamt of Luna last night. I don't know that I have a lot more to say about it. It was a nice dream. Anyway, though, what I thought I would talk more about is about that I went to see the movie Ready Player One on Saturday. And because obviously this is a book and movie that have got a weird sort of complicated internet presence lately, let me give a little bit of history for anyone who doesn't know that, or just my own personal take on that history from for anyone who's more aware of what's going on there. Is that the book itself, when I first read it, um, more or less a little bit after it came out when it was still relatively new. I recall really liking it at the time, but when looking back on it, even almost right away, realizing it has kind of just a lot of the nostalgia contained within it worked on me. It was nostalgia for things that I liked and appreciated, and so it was a little bit just being pandered to in a very specific way that I wasn't used to, um, and so I liked that about it. The story itself contained within is pretty standard tropey wish fulfillment stuff, and unfortunately, the book actually contains a couple of places that are um, where the main character is not super nice. um, but also, I messed with my voice settings a little bit this time. I hope it's not too loud or too weird, um, but I think part of what inspired the backlash to the book to get greater over time was things like Gamergate, where this attitude from a segment of the internet that liking the things they like is like how they define their whole identity, and they're very exclusionary about it. If you don't like things in the same way that they like them, and if you don't have the same encyclopedic pop culture knowledge of these things that they do, that makes them better people than you. And that this idea of this wish fulfillment element of, the fact that they know every single little detail about the pop culture things that they love literally is what helps them to save the world in a story like that. And the main character in these little bits where he's not so nice really kind of falls very neatly into line with the attitudes of some of these movements that hurt a lot of people. And so it's kind of becomes a little distasteful to even think back on it, even though I'll confess I enjoyed it at the time. Now, my hope when I knew that they were making a movie of it, and that specifically Steven Spielberg was making a movie of it, I had hoped that he was perhaps the right director to smooth off those rough edges and and make a movie that takes some of the themes that really are more interesting in the book. This idea that in a sort of future dystopia world, the idea that people would look back for their pop culture because they don't see any forward. Um, Dealing with some of this idea of escapism versus dealing with problems in the real world. And some of these ideas, and then on top of that, the doing it in a movie is kind of its strengths as a medium lend itself better to having just these tons and tons of references and visual action and everything. That's just something movies are better at than books generally. And so I was excited by that prospect. And how does the actual movie follow through with all of that? And the answer is mixed. I think that the movie does smooth off a lot of the rough edges. it takes away a lot of the parts um, where the main character is kind of just a little bit too entitled about thinking he's literally a better person for knowing all of these things about 80s pop culture. It takes these challenges and makes them less about, like, you have to prove to me that you're cool enough to rule the Oasis, and more about, like, trying to understand this creator of the Oasis, this VR game, as a person, and having that carry with it a theme of not doing things in your life that you regret later because you were so obsessed with escapism. And so dealing with some of that. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the part of, like, just showing this huge action sequence where you have all sorts of characters from different different pop culture things all in this big, amazing fight, and the effects and everything. All of that is actually really remarkable. I mean, it's extremely well done. It just visually and from an action perspective, it's very, very good. There are definitely aspects of the plot that don't really stand up to scrutiny. There's one pretty jarring shift in emotional tone that I think we could kind of quibble with. Lots of things that kind of just, as soon as you ask the question, you're like, so really all of these people just coincidentally happen to be within 10 minutes drive of Columbus, Ohio? Okay. But that said, like I said, as sort of a thrill ride type of movie, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. So I do recommend it, even though I had all of these caveats associated with it. So I'll go ahead and leave it there, and I will talk to you tomorrow for 5 more minutes.